So I took the... No, I didn't take the dogs out. I went out to vape. And...
Addict.
Yes, whatever. And I hear a helicopter lifting off from the hospital. Don't think anything of it.
How close is the hospital?
A couple blocks.
Yeah, it's like you can like go to the end of our road and see the hospital.
Yeah.
Are there in okay.
So I didn't think anything of it, but it didn't sound quite right. It didn't sound like a life flight helicopter or whatever. It sounded like a helicopter I was familiar with. So I look up, and it doesn't look like a life flight helicopter. It looked like a Blackhawk. Later on, the techno wizard that's hiding from the camera will show you pictures of a Blackhawk and a life flight helicopter.
Oh, I will? Okay.
Yes. So I'm watching it, and it gets about treetop level and then goes dark. By going dark, I mean it shuts off all its lights, something which is not legal for a commercial flight to do in United States airspace.
Why would it go dark?
So people can't see it.
But we can hear it.
So, because just because you can hear it, it could be anywhere within, nearby.
Oh, I could tell it was over the house.
Yeah.
That sucker comes through all the time.
Yeah.
And you can always, and you can tell they all, one sounds different from the other. And it also, that particular one always goes over our house, and all the others go around and come in from the other direction. It's not that fucker.
Unless you're familiar with what it sounds like, you'll say, oh, it's a helicopter, look up, not see it, and move on. If you're familiar with what they sound like, it might pique a little bit of interest, but unless you can actually find it, you're probably just going to move on.
Well, that and most people don't care.
Yeah.
Take point. On Facebook, I posted it. I have nothing on my list but people who are worried about TIs and the agenda. Nobody cared. The closest military base, public one, is 1.5 hours to the west. Then there is the major army base 3 hours to the south. So, you should care, because this is an outward sign of how fast it is. They are blatantly going to our hospital here in our little town, which means people in our hospital know what's going on. And nobody cared, and we should care.
Hi there. I have a bit of information for you. This is actually me evolving as someone who's learning about stuff, and concerning my stance on the belief that aliens and the Illuminati and everything have a bloodline fetish. It's because the reason why I don't necessarily believe that, because there was well, bloodlines, it's I don't know, somebody will come forward and they'll say they chose me because I'm Native American. And being a Native American, I have always found that hard to believe, because that's not why I was chosen. I was chosen because I'm an old soul, and because I grew up in this open-minded household and had the propensity to do certain things, and these are gifts that all of mankind has. So you hear the more prominent people say, well, they follow bloodlines. It goes back generational. There's this family that their super great grandmother all the way up to the queen was getting abducted, and the reason why I don't necessarily believe in that is because to say they follow bloodlines, although it does back up that we as humans are nothing more but cattle, dogs, cats, and cows, which we do follow bloodlines with our livestock and our pets. But if that's the case, then they would be doing that for the entire whole of the world, if you think about it, because although there are billions of people who are documented abductions, there are billions out there who aren't. And my current theory is this problem encompasses the whole world, not just certain bloodlines. But I don't have enough evidence. It's just, all we know for sure is that if you are an abductee, then chances are your grandmother was an abductee, and your grandfather and then it goes up like that. But there's, the scientific process is you're supposed to disprove a hypothesis and disprove a theory, and all the evidence really says is that people have been getting abducted for a long time, and that it's going to follow in families, but no one has explored, or am I remembering because my grandfather was picked up, and it was a more open family where, and the ancestral memories and stuff enabled me to remember, or, there are just too many unanswered questions, and it just doesn't feel right that you follow bloodlines just because it's a bloodline. There's a lot of factors that I happen to know of that kind of supports the bloodline theory, but also doesn't the way it is presented. But anyway, one thing is when it's presented they follow bloodlines, we're given examples of, well, this person's great-grandmother was abducted and they were talking about how it happened 5 generations back or something, and there's no meat. It's just this happened, and there's no meat to really back this up. And so I was talking to someone today, and they mentioned Project Monarch, which, if you don't know, is a following thing from MK Ultra. And if you're going to research this, especially in the mind control arenas, you need to know about Project Monarch, especially since it's a household name. Everyone knows it. It's pretty much, blamed for everything, even though, one, it has never been officially admitted to, and two, the program by now has been shut down, and all of the stuff has been given to another name, so it's no longer Project Monarch. It's probably Project Lizard or something. But he mentioned how it got its name, and it was something I never heard before, and it completely made sense of those people who come forward. I have been picked because I'm Native American. So I looked up, and let me scroll down, because I found this article at the Vigilant Citizen, Origins and Techniques of Monarch Mind Control. And it's pretty informative. It goes through the history and MK Ultra. It has a nice little photo of Joseph Mengele there, who gained notoriety, according to this article, for being one of the SS physicians who supervised the selection of arriving prisoners for this stuff. Here's an excerpt from the report. Here's an article from MK Ultra, a declassed document, a photo of one of the early victims, and going down to Monarch programming, which is what we're talking about. And here we are, origins of the name. I'm going to read an excerpt. Monarch Mind Control is named after the monarch butterfly, an insect who begins its life as a worm and after a period of cocooning is reborn as beautiful butterflies. Okay, and it's talking about how some characteristics are applicable. When the monarch makes its yearly journey around the globe, it actually lands somewhere and has babies, and they die, and the new ones go to the next stop, and they have this genetic memory of how to get there and back again, even though one single butterfly doesn't make the whole trip. And it's this genetic memory that's inside the butterfly, and the theory was through traumatic programming and being put through crap, that this same kind of stuff could be put inside a monarch subject. A lot of it is based on some early mind control techniques from like thousands of years ago. For example, the Egyptian Book of the Dead has some stuff in it that has been used, and other things. When a person is, it says here, when a person is undergoing trauma induced by electroshock, a feeling of lightheadedness is evidence, as if one is floating or fluttering like a butterfly. There is also a symbolic representation pertaining to the transformation or metamorphosis of this beautiful subject, the cocoon and how you're changing. And if you come from a ancestral stock, not necessarily a bloodline, but an ancestral stock, bloodline would be meaning family, that has been through some horrible things, like, for example, the Cherokee and their Trail of Tears, the Jews and the Holocaust, then you are an easier subject for this type of programming. And finally it makes sense when someone says I was picked for this kind of programming because I was this blood stock. The thing is, a lot of people that are coming forward, I was picked because I'm Native American. They they're not talking about Monarch programming. You know, they talk about stuff that is kind of similar, but not really. So that kind of consequential evidence still doesn't quite match up. But there is this new bit of evidence that is hardcore, scientific, makes sense. So yeah, I personally went through. I mean, pretty sure I went through some of the stuff because when me and my husband found one of Springmeyer's books, and he found some of the things that are done. They matched my early childhood, so I know that I went through early Monarch programming, but I'm pretty positive it wasn't a bloodline situation. The reason being is on the Native American side, my father's side, we don't really have this. We have your typical Native American history of losing children and trouble on the reservation and you know, knowing how to do powers but pretty much being left alone, and then my father came along. It's the German English side that has the abduction and the military history. So saying I was picked because I was Native American is not backed up. I was picked because I had a propensity for things, and I just happened to be Native American, which, when they saw this, they would have said, oh, well, she's good for this. Because one thing I remember very clearly, and something I used to actually be proud of before I understood, was that I was the youngest. I was the last. I knew I was the last. I knew I was the youngest to go through the program. I knew that the quote-unquote team had been shut down after me, and things had been moved. And it was like I just kind of got thrown in as an afterthought. So, but there is this really big information here. I highly recommend that if you do not know about Project Monarch or have only glanced at it, find this article. Check it out. It's some pretty deep stuff.
Nice. Let's talk about Caravan Trail. Okay, so there's let's make the stars blue this time. Okay, so here's the Milky Way. La 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 Milky Way, la 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 Milky Way, la 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 Milky Way, la 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 Milky Way, Milky Way. Okay, here we go. Milky Way. So this is the Milky Way galaxy, right?
Right.
Well, the Caravan Trail actually hops along the arm of the Milky Way galaxy because everything's closer packed. And we can actually, if we're on planet, you know how when we're on the surface, here's a tree. It's a tree. Okay, fuck you, it's a tree. We'd hope if I could actually, try this again. You know how we're on the Earth's surface, and here's the grass. Okay. And here's a happy tree. Okay, to show you that we're on the Earth's surface. Okay. And it's just we're sitting there drinking homemade meat or whatever. Ooh, meat. Okay, we gotta have a bottle of meat right there. Okay, and we can see stars. All right, overhead at night. We're actually seeing an arm of the Milky Way galaxy, and that is part of the Caravan Trail. And there's points, and it's not always planets. It's asteroids. It's homemade bases. It's what used to be military outposts from the old empire. And people hop back and forth from market to market. And it started off as, an interchange system when things first fell, because barter and trade had to be revived and people were reforming, and then it just remains this intergalactic mall, really. And it's still there. Which brings me to the Persia. Okay, I will try to draw a Persia properly. Oh my god. Heaven forbid, because the Persia are pretty cool. This is not to scale, and it's very stylized. Okay, nothing. Okay, but they're pretty. And, I've heard them described as wolf-like. Okay, I've heard them described as, you know, Wookiees. But I see them as cat-like, and their culture is pretty cool. And you know what? Suddenly I have no desire to tell you about the purchase. So never mind, moving on.